Good morning again. My name is John Donadio. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Association of Counties, and I'm going to welcome you to our first in a series of virtual workshops. This one's entitled Artificial Intelligence and Its Impact on Local Governments. This session will introduce you to the new tool of artificial intelligence as a new technology that could help government agencies provide services in an effective and an efficient manner. The session will also address how local governments could use chatbots and other AI-driven techno applications along with potential ethical and policy implications, and maybe even eliminate some of the fear that people like me have with AI. So hopefully, Mark, you'll be able to help out with that. Just a couple of housekeeping items. A recording of this session will be made available on our website. We'll also send it to everyone who's participating today for you to review, and you can share with your colleagues if you like it. If they can't make it. If you have questions and answers throughout the session, put that in the Q&A and not the chat box. And Mark will try to get to them if he can, if he's not going to cover it later on in the presentation. And I want to take a minute to also thank Angela Wolf for running this workshop today. We appreciate it a great deal and congratulate her on opening a new in-person studio in South Philly. So if you ever need any type of video work, Angela does a phenomenal job for us. So make sure you use her, copy down her contact information. So it really is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. He's been around for as long as I know. I'm sure many of you on this call already know who he is. He's been in public service and been a public servant for 50 years. 50 years he's been a public servant. 37 years in local government. Serving as an administrator in several municipalities. 26 years he served. Of that 37, he served with the Division of Local Government Services. 14 as the deputy director. He is now currently the assistant director of the Bloustein Local Government Research Center and also serves as the secretary for NJAC, the Technology Education Foundation Board. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you my friend, Marc Pfeiffer.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody can hear me. So I appreciate that opening. Yes, I've been around for a long time. My computer experience goes back to actually punching cards, using IBM punch cards in high school to compile statistics for our baseball team, which was an interesting way to start in this field. And it's been part of my professional career ever since. And as you've gathered, and the reason you're here is that everybody's been hearing a lot about artificial intelligence. I've been following it from the beginning. Jumped on ChatGPT and what we call generative AI, generative AI, and since last November, when this whole thing started, since November a year ago, when the whole thing started, and it's a really fascinating field. It is up and coming. It is going to have changed to the way we work and live that is similar to really the introduction of the internet itself. It's going to be that big a deal. It's not happening all at once. If you're involved in technology, it certainly seems that way, that everybody's now talking about it, and it's sucking up a lot of day-to-day oxygen, some of which is warranted, some of which is not. And I know we have some of our professional IT folks on the call. So shout out to John and Mary Lou, who are New Jersey GMIS members. We'll talk more about that later. But I want to start by basically telling you and sharing my screen. I'm going to go away now and show you that I used AI to help prepare my presentation today. And it started with AI-generated content through a chatbot called Claude.ai, and it did the original deck for me. I gave it a prompt that said, hey, I'm doing a presentation. I want an introduction about issues that local government officials want to know. Give me an outline and a PowerPoint. And then I asked it to turn it into a PowerPoint presentation with another chatbot. And it tells me, so on these slides, everything is just in black, came from the AI itself. So the system told me in its response to my question, said the system may occasionally generate incorrect, I added the word incomplete, or misleading information and produce offensive or biased content. It is not intended to give advice. And when you see something in red on the screen, that is what I added in. Your presenter used this AI content as a rough draft and edit it based on his knowledge and experience to meet the needs of his presentation. Substantive content changes are shown as strikeouts and additions. Changes related to style, images, and formatting are not displayed. AI is okay with that, but it's not great. But you'll see I've added a good deal of content, and there's a lesson to that, is that when you're using a generative AI program or a chatbot, which is what most people are starting to use, but it's only touches the surface of how AI is being used today, it's a rough draft. You don't necessarily want to believe everything it says. You need to double check, and you need to proofread, and that becomes important. So we're going to jump into this now. What AI does, we're starting at the beginning here. So AI automates tasks and decisions typically requiring human intelligence. Examples of that are image recognition, analytics, predictions. By the way, if I use some word, I'm trying to limit the jargon here. If I am using some words or phrases that you don't know, please pop them in as a question, and I will do my best to define them. I don't want you to have a lot of misunderstood words here, because that affects how much you're going to be able to remember or understand what I talk about. Right? So that's the first thing AI does. The next thing is it's really good at identifying patterns and then extracting insights from data and doing it at a very, very large, powerful scale. It is not something that we've seen before in a lot of the technology that we use on a day-to-day basis. The exception being large social media groups, applications such as Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snap. All of those have been using AI since they really become the movement that they are today. It continuously learns and improves over time as it processes more data. We'll find there's a downside to that, because if it learns things that are incorrect, it doesn't necessarily know what's right or wrong. It learns something and improves, but if it's learning bad data or misinformation, it's only going to enhance that and amplify it. Some key technologies include machine learning. This is where a program is fed lots of data or pointed to lots of data that it absorbs, it processes that data, and it learns from it. You have seen that if you've done a CAPTCHA, for example, identify the motorcycles in this picture. That's, in effect, machine learning. Natural language processing. And this is the thing that has enabled generative AI, chatbots. Natural language processing means the program understands what you're telling it in normal language, in normal English, or in dozens of other languages now. It is capable of understanding our day-to-day conversations and learning from that. That's a huge deal. Robotics, right? It can repeat things. It can learn and repeat things. You've probably seen videos of Amazon using robots, robots on car assembly lines. Right? And we've started to see delivery robots on streets in some college towns across the country. We don't have them in that where I am at Rutgers, though, where we're seeing robots are making decisions based on AI functional programs. Image, still in video creation. And this is one of the newest things they're capable of doing, is that given a prompt, that could say, draw me a picture of a cartoon squirrel working in the White House. It will do that. It will create a still image. If you tell it to include some motion, some of the newer ones that are starting to pop out will do that. And one of the newest ones that we just became aware of about 2 weeks ago, it's capable of producing cinema-grade images as a short video. So these are big deals, and they are going to change the way we do a lot of things going forward. Computer vision, recognizing things, using video cameras to look at things and identify what they are. So we're seeing these in surveillance cameras. We're seeing these in cameras that people put in downtowns, in subway systems, right? In your parks, All right. It can identify what's going on. It can identify normal human behavior from violent behavior. So if a camera that's in a park is seeing somebody beat up on somebody, it can recognize that and flag the people who are responsible for watching that video that, hey, there's something going on here. Check it out. All of which enables computing device machines to perceive their environment, learn from data, and then make autonomous decisions. And that last one is what kind of scares people along the way. Its importance in government: it can automate routine tasks, gain insights from data, enhance decision-making, and improve citizen services, which in theory ultimately leads to more efficient and effective governance. We're starting to see applications using AI that really do help government, that help citizens get their work done faster. All right, when they come to government, their application is processed faster. They can get their questions answered easier. Right? It is still a young technology. So if you're on if you're calling for some technical support, if you're a citizen calling, I have questions about this application I'm filling out, they may get what we call a chatbot. This is the computer generated voice that understands what's being asked and can figure out what the answer to a question is. They're only as good as what they learn, what they're programmed to learn, but they can learn as they go forward. But we're young with that. It's at the beginning of that tech, and it's going to have glitches to it, but it's also going to get better over time. And that's the thing we have to remember. Where we have problems with technology today, particularly with AI, as we learn what goes wrong, the technology will get better. So I put a slide, or I'm putting in 2 slides here about chatbots, because that's the thing that's got everybody's attention right now. Chatbots, ChatGPT, the AI like Claude.ai, DALL-E, which is an art-based program. All right, they're all chatbots. They provide automated conversational experiences. They complete simple tasks like looking up data and more complex ones as well. It can translate languages, and it can write computer code. I'm not a coder, right? But if I could give it some instructions, I want you to create a database with the following field, yada, 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 assign more information to it, give it more information, which could be 100 words long or longer in some cases. It will translate those English instructions, or if you're in France, in French or German, and turn it into computer code that can then be run on the system to see how well it works and then put into an application. It responds to user input and queries versus what we call prompts, which are words describing what the user wants to know or tells the bot what to do. It works by using rules that it's built upon. The programmers build in rules to it that tells it how to do things, creates decision trees. If A exists, you do this. If it's not, you do that, and work your way down. And it happens instantaneously, right? And it has specialized AI techniques, which generally fall under the area of neural technology on how it learns. Right? And that's a whole world of how they've figured out how the human brain works and associates concepts that the way the brain works. They've been able to mimic that in computers, take a lot of power, requires very specialized chips to work. But they figured out how to do that, and it works amazingly well. And again, is only going to get better. It makes mistakes now. It processes and analyzes user input. So when I tell it something, all right, it will do something with it. It will analyze it. So I could give it a spreadsheet with data in it, and I could tell it to do the following analysis of this and tell me what you find. And it'll do that for me. Right? I don't have to spend time in Excel trying to figure out a pivot table to how to do something where I can just say, here's a spreadsheet. I want to know these subtotals by region. And if I do it right and explain it correctly, it'll do that. That's really impressive. It generates relevant responses based on its programming. So it knows what it knows. It's learning from what its experiences are, and it bases its responses on that. It doesn't very well go outside that domain. If you ask it about something it doesn't know about, it should basically say, I don't have that information. All right. You'll have to go somewhere else, do a web search or somewhere, find it someplace else. And that's an important element that a well-programmed chatbot is going to present as an answer, as opposed to guessing something where you'll see the term hallucination. We're going to come back to that. That it wants to answer, so it makes up what sounds right to it. And that's one of the areas why you have to check what an AI does when you get answers that are factual, that are along those lines. Becomes an interesting challenge. Now, what it knows, as I said, is information, rules, and decision logic provided by developers. It has data and conversation patterns that it's learned from users, and only what it's been manually programmed or exposed through training. It doesn't know, but the catch is it doesn't always know what it doesn't know. If it sounds like something it knows, it can give you an answer. I'll give you an example, and this has been fixed in most cases. When ChatGPT started a year ago, basically, or over a year ago now, I went in and asked it to give me a biography of Marc Pfeiffer in New Jersey, and I kept these. Every time I asked, it gave me a different answer. It figured out somehow that I had a PhD in economics from Rutgers. I never went to school at Rutgers. That I had experiences working for government agencies I never worked for. It was basically making things up, things that sounded right for Marc Pfeiffer, who it was able to figure out had something to do with public policy in New Jersey. But it got so much wrong. It didn't get my actual college degrees right. That's early. It's gotten better. When I've asked that now, it says it doesn't know enough about me to do that, which is good that programmers figured it out. But you can rightfully be concerned about, well, if it doesn't know what it doesn't know, how do you know what it gives is correct? That's where human expertise comes in. And that's one of the challenges we have with it. But in sum, chatbots provide conversational interfaces powered by rules and AI. They process user input to respond appropriately based on programming. Their knowledge comes from developer coding, which is training the AI, and ongoing conversations with users. And that's all the things that ChatGPT said about itself with my elaboration. Here's some other comments. Commercial chatbots, and these are the ones that you're going to run into, ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, which is a Microsoft product, and Gemini, which is Google's product, have been trained on as much of the internet as is publicly available. And that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff there. But it doesn't necessarily know what is good or reliable information versus that which is not. For that, it requires programmers to teach it rules and give it instructions about what's good or bad or what can be trusted and what can't be trusted. Answers to questions that are based on understanding the question, that's our natural language skills. Then it predicts the words that answer the question based on what it has learned. So when I asked the chatbot for my bio, it was trying to figure out how to answer the question and then figure out the words that make sense to follow. And that's how it came up with those bad degrees, those degrees I didn't have. Because somebody who does public policy or does public finances could have a degree in economics. So that makes sense. So what he was answering is, well, Marc Pfeiffer sounds like somebody that has a degree, a PhD in economics, which is obviously bullshit. But it didn't know. But it's learned now. And that's the important thing, that this stuff is constantly learning. Its programmers train and teach it how to respond. So it's relying on the programmers to do a very good job. And it's constantly learning. Along with applications that can create art and graphics and videos, these are the most popular commercial AIs that are out there. But they only touch a small bit of what AI can do. Any of you today can go to chatgpt.com or Claude.ai or Copilot or Gemini and start using it. You can ask it questions, whatever you want. You can say, I want give me an outline for a PowerPoint deck. It can do that. So there's lots going on there. Pros and cons. Let's kind of summarize those things. Pros, the ability to personalize, automate, save labor, and new capabilities. All kinds of new things that we are still starting to learn about. Cons, bias, unfair and inappropriate outcomes, the potential for job displacement, antisocial uses, lack of transparency, and accessibility challenges. Chatbots can be wrong and hallucinate data in response to queries because it sounds good. You should be getting that idea now. For chatbots, responses should be considered as rough drafts and require review and validation of its references. You may have heard about some court cases where some woe-begotten attorneys asked ChatGPT to prepare a brief on something, and it did. Gave it the instructions, the right instructions, and it produced a brief. The attorney said, well, this sounds good. It listed some cases. Great. They submitted it to the judge without proofreading it, without checking those cases, because they sounded great. Judge tried to check them, found out they didn't exist. The AI hallucinated those things. Now, programmers are working on fixing that, and to a great degree, they have. They put in controls on that. But again, it doesn't know what it doesn't know. Use of the AI requires balancing benefits while managing risks through governance and oversight. And that's where government has to think hard about when it decides to use an AI application. You want to be assured that you have your risks covered, and the decisions on using AI are well informed. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. What can we use AI for in government? Streamlining operations, chatbots for citizen services, process automation, the process of, you're getting forms, you have to look at the forms, you have to do some processing on them, make decisions based on the answers people submit, then something else happens. Well, that's process automation. Predictive analytics. We are collecting more data than ever before. We have sensors, we have collect data, we have forms that are coming in, they're all automated, so they're in databases. We've got all this kind of data. AI is very good at looking at that data and analyzing it and making predictions based on trends it sees. Use of robotic processes. That's the processing of things. That's those things that go step by step. People do different things. AI is very good at automating those things and turning and freeing those people up to do more advanced things that actually require human engagement. And that's the idea. It can free up human resources for higher value activities and reduce operational costs. And yes, at the same time, it can result, as mentioned before, in job displacement. There may be some things that people don't need to do anymore. And in those cases, you either wind up retraining those people to do more advanced work, or you wind up having changes in how many people you need to do certain work. And that's real. It has to be addressed. It's been addressed over time. I am sure that if there are any Gen Z folks out here, they've never heard of the idea of what a secretary was, or that an executive, a manager in an office when they wanted to write a letter, would ask the secretary to come in and take stenography to type up a letter on a typewriter. And what was more advanced is when we used dictating machines, tape recorders, to be able to do that. Those jobs are all gone. Very few people have dedicated secretaries before, and they're called assistants because they do more advanced level work. Right? These types of changes happen throughout society. They've happened for generations. This is the next step of that. They can be used to enhance citizen services. They can actually write personalized letters, introductions, streamline service delivery, and enable efficient communication between citizens and government agencies, which actually includes drafting letters and press releases. I can ask the chatbot to draft a letter to name person and address, telling them that we got their letter and here's what we're going to do about it, and put it in business format, in formal business language, and it will do that. I could also ask them to say the same thing, to do the same thing, but in a casual letter or in a casual email. Here's some facts about an event we're having. Write me a press release for this. And it will do that. It's very good at that. People, governments all across the country are starting to use it for that, to do their rough drafts, right? And how much attention that gets as far as editing it, that's every organization makes its own choices on it. Support decision making. That goes back to analytics and simulations for resource allocation and other policies. This is a big deal because we're seeing, for example, water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, traffic sensors, where we have sensors that are counting traffic. They're timing. They can do traffic lights. We have now AI programs that are basically doing analysis to say, okay, we need to increase this chemical because we're seeing this happen. We're seeing traffic bottles up here, so we need to change the traffic lights before and after. Right? Those are things that are starting to happen. They're very good at doing that. Right? I mentioned before video cameras in public areas. When the AI sees something that isn't normal, it can alert the people in charge that there's something that's not normal here. So lots of things happen there. Environmental management and IoT, that's the Internet of Things. That's all those sensors we're talking about. It's processing analysis and decisions based on IoT sensors. Community development. This is just really interesting and can be very exciting. And we're really starting out on that journey now. Using computer vision for infrastructure monitoring, language services. That's basically taking your things that you normally do in English and translating it to the languages of your residents and doing it faster and hopefully more reliably than before. Creation of digital twins that model changes in infrastructure or conditions. It's basically taking a digital version of your water treatment system or your sewage collection system, and it becomes basically a computer program that simulates what your system actually does, so you can model different types of challenges to it. If the water flow increases greatly, how do you handle that? If you have a traffic control system, traffic increases, you can test certain things, or you want to try to say we're going to take 4 lanes down to 2 lanes with a turn lane and bicycle lanes. What will that do to traffic? You can model those things relatively easily now. I'll put a plug for Bloustein. We're starting to train our planners on this, our student planners on this type of tech. So when they get out and graduates and go back out to the world to work, they can start to use these things and bring them to you. Ethics are a big deal when it comes to AI. Bias mitigation. So when people are developing AI ethically, they want to mitigate bias, which involves identifying and addressing algorithmic biases to ensure fair and equitable outcomes in decision making. Now, some people on this call are probably wondering, what's an algorithm bias? So Wikipedia tells us that algorithm bias describes systematic and repeatable errors in a computer system that create unfair outcomes, such as privileging one category over another in ways that are different from the intended function of the algorithm. We see this challenge where AI is now involved in human resources and literally interviewing people for jobs, right? Where the AI is, you're on a video camera, you're on a video interview, and it's the AI asking questions, observing your mannerisms, how you respond to questions, analyzing the content of the questions, right? Analyzing the emotion that's involved in the question by analyzing the change in your voice and how you respond to questions. All of these things go into what can result in algorithmic bias, because it says, well, if you answer questions this way, somebody answers a question this way, well, we're going to classify you like this. Well, that may be bad. That could affect people who have low income, different races, different abilities or disabilities. And so we have to be very careful with it when it comes to AI ethics. Transparency involves making AI processes and decisions understandable and accountable, enabling users to trust and understand AI-driven systems. Some of you now are thinking right now, well, what about AI used to identify people, right? To do facial matching. We've heard about some really bad use cases where police departments have gotten a picture they have a sketch of somebody, they put it into an AI application online that hasn't been tested or validated well. They come up with a picture of somebody who they match to be a local resident. And based on that and that alone, they go out and arrest that person. And then they find, well, that person couldn't have done it because if you looked harder, you would have discovered they could not have been there at the scene of the crime when the crime happened. Right? It's happened too often. People are starting to get the hang of that they need to do a better job of using that facial recognition as one input to making decisions on things. Right? Explaining to people your policies on how they work becomes very important, particularly in minority communities where you've had incidents of bias in the past. Right? You want to make sure the public, when they are affected by AI decisions that your systems make, that they understand what you're doing and have the ability to comment on it to help keep you honest in a way and to prevent abuse. That becomes a big deal. Privacy protection is similar. You want to be able to prioritize the protection of personal data and privacy, implement data governance and security measures to safeguard sensitive information. Now, those are really nice sounding words to a technologist. So those of you in the call who have to manage these things, you know that data governance and security measures to safeguard sensitive information is a lot more than just saying those words. There's a lot of technology behind it, a lot of time and attention that goes into making those things work. And that requires effort in planning and management and actually getting the work done on a regular basis. And finally, we have to assess the impact of the digital divide on access to online services. We find in urban areas and low income areas that our cable companies and our wireless systems do not always provide the type of service in low income areas as they produce in wealthier suburban areas. Costs can be higher, service not as reliable, speed not as fast, and that becomes a big deal, unfortunately. And we are finding that becomes a question and a challenge to folks when it comes to understanding, when it comes to delivering services. So, for example, we can have a case where you want to automate a particular function, all right, and it requires web access, all right. If you've got a population and your application's in English, so if you've got an application that does those things, and it's difficult to access that service otherwise, you're going to disenfranchise people in your community that don't have access to the internet, that their only access may be a phone, a low-cost phone that doesn't handle the speed or the capacity to process the application that you've built, or it's not in a language that people understand. So as we automate, and we'll use the word innovate later as well, and digitalize our services, which AI lets us do better and faster than we have before, you need to keep in mind, who are you serving? And is everybody who needs access to this going to be able to easily access it? And if not, what is your alternative? Right? I see, Anna, you had asked a question about algorithmic bias. I think I gave you an example when we talked about HR issues. If you need something else, let me know. If those of you who are interested in that further, there's a great book called Weapons of Algorithmic Destruction, I believe. It's a great little book. If you need it, send me a note and drop your email in, and I will get that for you. So finally, these practices I've said also affect government policy choices. If you're going to put up video cameras in your parks, all right, some residents may be concerned about, okay, who's watching and what are they doing with the information? You've got an obligation to make that clear to the public of what you're doing with the information, how it's being used, how long it's being kept, who has access to it, and how it's used. right? Because otherwise you wind up in trouble. There's this classic case in San Diego where they were putting cameras on streetlights, video cameras, for basically street security. Residents got outraged by that because the city never told them they were doing it. They just did it and said, well, who's watching this? What's being done with the information? How's it being used? How long is it stored for? Right? Those are reasonable questions that people want to know. So along with all these other challenges, like everything else when it comes to digital technologies, we have security and compliance issues. Whoops, whoa. Let me just push the wrong button. Sorry about that. There we go. Security and compliance. So AI applications require cybersecurity measures to protect against cyber threats, data breaches, and unauthorized access to sensitive government information. This addresses how governments use AI. It does not include the reality of bad actors who are currently using AI apps to create cybersecurity threats. A big deal in cybersecurity right now is bad actors, particularly overseas state actors, trying to basically break into systems by sending out what really looks like very good emails from reliable companies, uh, sending voice message and having conversations with people using AI generated voices, which is another thing that's the thing. Um, and they are really weaponizing chatbots and other AI applications basically for evil and harm, and to create harm into systems, to break into systems, to compromise, to do introduce ransomware into systems, data theft, all of those things that we talk about that we protect against cybersecurity. AI and chatbots in particular right now have amplified those particular challenges. I see Heather Darling just asked, were they using cameras in Chicago to detect gunshots and dispatch police to the area? The answer is yes. That was ShotSpotter was using AI, and there's one or two other companies like that now. They are using AI because they're trying to recognize the vibrations, the sound that's created by shots or other things going wrong, and try to recognize what they are. And people were upset by it because it wasn't very reliable. Now, as I said, this stuff will always get better. Will it get good enough for some of these applications? Not quite sure. So that's the deal there. So thanks, Heather. That's a very good question. Okay, moving on here. Legal compliance with relevant laws, regulations, and standards to ensure legal adherence and ethical use of AI technologies. Laws concerning the use of AI have yet to evolve. It is a major point of discussion in Congress and state houses particularly in the absence of federal regulation. Congress right now is spending an enormous amount of time and effort trying to figure out how to deal with all of the challenges that AI presents, from dealing with kids to national security, and everything in between. We are working this stuff out. Hopefully, over the next year or two, we will get our act together. But in the meantime, states, including New Jersey, are acting on their own to introduce legislation that would control the use of AI. Some of that becomes really challenging because we're talking about First Amendment rights, uh, uh, due process rights. So we have a lot of these proposed legislation, and including some that have already been signed into law in some states that are undergoing constitutional tests. Excuse me a second. Okay, no horse here. Let's see. Did I get everything? Okay. Data protection. From an IT standpoint, when you're collecting all this data from sensors and video cameras, you need to prioritize protection of the data. You need to implement encryption, have strong access controls, and secure data storage to safeguard your government data and citizen information. In a lot of cases, you're going to be using cloud-based applications with the cloud to store information. You'll be using third parties to store that information. So you need to make sure that they know what they're doing and they are showing how they keep their data and their systems safe and secure, as well as things that are sitting on your own servers within your organization. It's a critical dimension and no different from using any other tech application on your own or coming from or stored in the cloud. Policy analysis. You need to be considering the impact of the public and use of data. Consider the impact of surveillance practices on the public and the need to manage that data. Climate policies can also be affected by data collected by sensors and evaluated by AI applications. User policies on how staff can use AI applications to prevent data leakage and unevaluated responses. You need to set policies on your staff. So if they're using a chatbot to analyze a spreadsheet, you need to make sure that your rules in a chatbot you're using don't use the input from that spreadsheet as data that it learns from or makes available to other people. That's your private information. It should not be something that other people have access to, and that requires attention to the rules of the chatbot or the application that you were using. That's a big deal. Right? And so that needs to be part of your consideration of when you're making AI decisions on how you're going to use it. And of course, we have budget. Budget is always a thing. We have cost of implementation. That encompasses technology infrastructure, software development and training on ongoing maintenance. That requires thorough budget planning and financial management. I will tell you in most cases, if you are a county commissioner or administrator or department director, you're not funding IT at a level that's enough. Arguably, you can say it's never enough. We can never have enough security. We can never do enough. But you've got to basically do a risk and analyze your risk and make sure you've got a balance there, that you're doing enough to protect your data. You're doing enough to invest in your staff. We'll come back to that actually. But enough to invest in your staff training and services to understand what you're doing. Return on investment analysis for AI implementation involves assessing the financial, operational, and strategic benefits against the implementation costs and risks. These are things you need to think about. It's sometimes a little difficult to do those things. It may not be clear. The returns may be fuzzy, but that's okay. You're allowed to accept fuzzy as long as you understand what the potential is for these things and what can happen if it goes great or if it gets screwed up and goes south on you. You need to be able to understand those risks and plan to be able to manage them along the way. Resource allocation, allocating the funds for workforce and technology resources that ensure the successful implementation and operation of AI solutions within your agencies. That's something you need to be able to do. It's making sure you're putting enough resource in and you're checking it. We're really good at starting projects in government, but we're not necessarily as good as we should be in managing those projects. We don't always invest enough resources in project managers to make sure we're doing what we need to do correctly. As it pains me to agree to say we can't always just trust a vendor that says we'll take care of this for you. You still need oversight and pay attention to project management, and it needs to be your people doing that. You just always can't trust vendors to that they're always going to do the right thing for you because they have their own issues along the way. So make sure you're putting enough resources in the right places. So after hearing all of this, you still want to go on and do something with AI. Great. That's really good. But here's how you want to do it. Planning. Require some objectives. Figure out what you want to accomplish. Assess your resource requirements. Establish clear timelines and milestones. Pre and post implement tracing of the system. AI just doesn't happen. Just because there's a chatbot that will do cool things, you just don't start using it. You need to think about the rules of the road. How are you going to use it? What it's going to be used for? Are you going to ensure that your staff, when they use it, are going to proofread and check the drafts and the data before something goes out to the public or is used for internal decision making? Right? How does it integrate with existing systems? You want to make sure that that the application is compatible with your current systems, that the data will integrate, and develop interoperable AI solutions, and making sure that one thing works with another thing to ensure seamless integration and operation. Ongoing operations require monitoring and retraining of the system when necessary. Just because the AI works out of the box doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. A town in New Jersey a couple months ago made a big deal that they were introducing a chatbot designed for an AI-based chatbot designed for government. Great. I knew the people up there. I said, okay, let me test this out. I went and they have a borough administrator. So I went to the chatbot and said, who is the borough administrator? And it came back with the name of the mayor. Wrong. It was wrong. It wasn't trained well. All right. So now they fixed it. But what else needed to be fixed? How will they fix it when other things come wrong? When newer things happen? If the business administrator changed, who is going to tell the AI that it changed, that the data changed? So you have to be able to ensure that you have that ongoing process of how you're going to use things, because your vendors are also going to be upgrading the system on a regular basis too. So there's got to be a lot of two-way flow between you and the vendor and you and the application itself to make sure it knows what it's doing and is current. Training and skill development encompasses technical training, change management, and cultivation of an AI and innovation-focused workforce. This is going to be new for your tech staff and for your operating folks. You just don't slap AI on them. You say, okay, here's the new thing. Here's how we're going to use it. And you've done some planning to figure out how you're going to do that. There's a lot of value that can come from AI, but you got to go in with your eyes open. And that theme, you're going to hear that all day here, for the next 15 minutes or so. It's about introducing innovation in government, and there's approaches to do that. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you a great resource for that. If you start thinking about those things. So what do you want to do next? One, you don't have to do anything. You monitor and look for opportunities, but it helps to be prepared. I just realized this was my slide, not the AI's. So this should be in red. It wasn't this smart. You can monitor and look for opportunities, but it helps to be prepared. Identify where you are now. Do you have any existing tech that uses AI? If so, are there any policy implications you want to think about? Understand that it's not going away and will have an impact on your agency eventually. Do your diligence. Review government tech literature. Identify low-hanging fruit and what it will take to pick it. Talk to vendors. Let your employees experiment, but have rules concerning what it is used for. For apps you try, start small pilot projects. Understand their limits and reliability and work with it accordingly. Find out what others are doing. Set reasonable policies via web search or asking a chatbot for a rough draft of what you think you want. As I did for this presentation, it gave me a great first draft of an outline. But I discovered from what I know, it missed stuff. Okay, we can fix that. I'm looking back on what I've done now. I said there's some words I want to change. I'll do that on the next for the next go round. Right? These are all things that you want to be able to do. You want to be informed about this and thoughtful. Don't rush to be the first. Unless you can manage being first, let others lead. It's usually best to get it right the first time. Some stuff are better risk takers than others. Great. Let them take their risks. Go for it. Learn from them. Communicate and network with them. And here's my cheap plug for GMIS. Have your tech leaders talk to other county tech leaders and network it. Join GMIS.org. That's our association of government tech leaders in New Jersey. We've got a bunch of counties who are members, and there should be more. And it's a great way to network and share information, and there's ways we can facilitate that as well. So that becomes an important thing that you want to think about doing. And then, of course, things what you shouldn't do. Don't rush into it. Get sold by vendors that it's magic. It's not magic. It takes work. Deploying takes effort, not just words. But don't rush. Don't ignore lessons learned by others. Do the diligence thing. Right? Ask around. People like being asked. They like sharing information on these things. Don't allow its use without setting appropriate use policies. Talk to your staff about its use. Assign someone responsibility for using it. Unless you have already blocked the use of AIs consciously, I guarantee you have some staff that are already experimenting with it. You don't want to discourage that. You just want to make sure they're using it on an informed and intelligent basis. So ask around and don't make people feel bad that they're using it or they're getting in trouble for using it. You want to encourage it, but you want to make sure it's done well. And as we're wrapping up here, some resources to think about. One, AI is all new, and you should be reading up on tech literature and publications. There's GovTech magazine. There's a bunch of things from the Center for Digital Government out there. Um, I have found, and it helps keep me pretty well informed on tech issues, Marketplace Tech. It's an NPR podcast that just covers how tech affects pretty much everything. It's available on all podcast platforms. It runs 7 to 10 minutes a day. I listen to it on my way to work. I highly recommend it. It will keep you well informed in a non-technical, non-jargon way about what's going on in tech and how it affects daily life, basically. Most government interest groups and professional organizations are starting to get their arms around it. You're going to see NACO is going to start to do stuff on this. They're already starting to explore it. You've got, I said, GovTech Magazine and those folks out there. ICMA for county administrators who are members, they're doing work on it. And actually, ICMA has got a conference in Boston in April. It's about AI in local government, and local means county government too for them. I'm actually doing a presentation on AI and public policy up there. So people are starting to get around it. Just the general literature you read about how government works, we're going to start talking about it more. I've mentioned innovation a couple times. Innovation, basically, in today's jargon, is about turning government services, employing digital technology to make government run better. That's innovation. There's a great website, innovate-us.org, innovateus.org, get it? It's free innovation and problem-solving training creating by and for public servants. The state's first chief innovation officer, Beth Novak, she helped start that. They do some really good training. They have like these 1 hour webinars, courses that you can take online. It's all free for government employees. If you want to start thinking about this in a more comprehensive way, encourage your staff to look at that stuff. Encourage your staff, your staff to look at it. It's not just technologists. It's just your regular line managers who are in charge of services, getting them to think from an innovation standpoint, understand how digital tech can work. It can really amplify your ability to understand this work and make it work for you. Another organization is apolitical.co. It's out of Great Britain. It has an international flavor on government tech. They talk about building the knowledge, skills, and connections you need to succeed in the public service. They go beyond innovation. They do a lot of things on writing. They do digital tech. They talk about writing and how to communicate in a government environment. Really, really good resources there. And I'll put a plug in here, Tech Fitness for Local Elected Officials and Administrators. This is a series of articles I've been doing on what elected officials and chief administrative officers and their staffs need to know about tech. It's non-techy focused, but it's all the jargon and things you need to know about managing in this environment. There's a link for that there. It's updated monthly as I issue new articles. Those articles are also now showing up in Public Management Magazine, which is a monthly magazine from ICMA, if you're a member of ICMA. I should also, I don't have this on the screen, but I should also put in another plug. CPM program, Certified Public Manager Program. I've been managing the curriculum for that, and we are starting to re-engineer the technology to take advantage of innovation, upgrading the technology course. It's a great program for turning supervisory level people into career managers. Highly recommend that. If you haven't checked that out, just do a search for SPAA, School of Public Affairs and Administration. So Rutgers, SPA, CPM, and it will bring you to the information on that. That's it. I'm done. Question time. What do we got? John, I can't hear you. That me?
There you go.
There we go.
I should have used my AI app to get me off the mute button.
Yeah.
So, Mark, I think we have one, looks like two suggestions. One in the chat says, can you speak about the efforts in Pennsylvania to establish a generative AI governance board advised by Penn State? Do you think that is a good approach?
Yeah. That's you don't have to go to Penn State. New Jersey we've started our own effort on that. The governor a couple months ago created an advisory board on AI in state government. We are creating a AI model, which is also private sector focused out of Princeton that the state's involved in with EDA, to amplify AI as an industry for economic development activity. That state group is already meeting, as far as I know. Nothing that stops any county from marshaling its own resources from businesses in the county to help them out, help them understand it. There's a lot of vendors out there. There's a lot of people selling stuff now, but getting your arms around it is something that we want to do. Rutgers at this point, we're also feeling our way through it as well. It's something that we're trying to do and figure out, and there's going to be a lot of kind of touching and feeling our way through this as far as people get up to speed on it. Everybody's learning. I mean, GMS Tech last year at our conference last year, they were showing a company that specialized in video surveillance cameras. And they were doing demos of street level cameras and in subways and things like that, in building corridors. It was recording stuff live. And they said that there was an incident involved, a male so tall that was wearing a red shirt. We need to find that guy because something went wrong. He did something or hurt somebody or attacked somebody. The people running that system were able to code into it. We're looking for a male like this wearing a red shirt and a jacket in this time frame. And they were able to search several dozen cameras feeds to find that guy and where he was in that particular time frame. I mean, we see that on crime procedurals on TV, but it's actually real and it works. We have automated license plate readers on most police cars today. So they're constantly checking where cars are. That helps too that's driven by AI. Yes, it's because it has to read the license plates. The AI application that helps us understand the license plate number, and then it matches it against the database. So there's information there out there. So we're feeling our way through. There's no perfect way of doing any of this stuff right now. So everybody's learning.
And then, Mark, I think we had just a statement from Anna Montera, who actually had to leave, and she's the new deputy county administrator in Mercer County, and left a link to a website that talks about how local government is using AI and just recommended that, it's kind of just like policy making that you have to test the algorithms and technologies before, implementing.
She's absolutely right. There's more and more web resources popping up on this stuff. Just doing a web search. Actually, one of the articles I did for the league was how AI can be used in local government. And I basically asked, I did one with ChatGPT and one with Claude. I asked the AI, what are use cases for AI in local government? We basically took that article, I edited it, and I showed the edits that I made to it, strikeouts and added stuff, and we printed it that way. It gave a very credible response. It missed some stuff. It didn't produce some downsides, but it was credible. Ask the AI, ask the ChatGPT. Remember, these, I don't know how well I mentioned, if I made it clear, but the chatbots have been trained to absorb most information on the internet, all right, including Reddit forums and not so much things that are paywall like Facebook and stuff like that, but news services, information that's posted by hospitals about healthcare, political things, good and bad. Uh, it's all there. So they know what's on the internet. So if you're doing a Google search, you can ask a chatbot similar questions. And it's going to give you a not so much list of websites necessarily, although the new Gemini application will give you text responses and websites where you can find them, and Copilot will do things along those lines as well. But it will give you a narrative explanation, and it will format the way you want it. It'll put it in the type of language you want, formal, business language, casual, talking to a friend. It has all those capabilities, and it's really remarkable.
Great. Thank you, Mark. We just have a number of folks that are just saying great presentation and thanking you. So I don't think we have any other questions, but going once, going twice. I think we're good, Mark. That's perfect. It's 11:03, man. That was a great presentation. I thank you.
John, I'm just going to put, I'll try to answer
Mm-hmm.
by putting in the chat my
Oh,
email.
contact info. Okay. Can you put your contact information in the either one, Q&A
That's
or
what I'm putting in chat.
yep.
It's mark.pfeiffer@rutgers.edu. I will try to answer questions I get. Um, but it's a fascinating field as somebody who's, my Venn diagram is like, government administrator, manager, public administrator, and tech person. They just overlap enough where I can explain the tech stuff to administrative people and explain administrative stuff to tech people. And everybody's learning this stuff now. Everybody's on a learning curve for it. Some are just faster than others. Find a person in your organization who's into this and cultivate them.